Hello, welcome to our joint technical meeting. This is a technical meeting of the joint societies. This meeting is sponsored or hosted by the Society of Marine Port Engineers in cooperation with Society of Naval Architects, Marine Engineers, Institute of Marine Engineering Science and Technology, and the American Society of Naval Engineers. This is our January meeting.
Okay, thank you, Paul. On behalf of the Society of Marine Port Engineers from New York, I want to thank Mike Edgerton and Luke Reinhold from HudsonTrident for making the journey up to give their presentation to us, for taking the time to enjoy a meal with us and socialize, as well as give this very interesting presentation. I have the honor of introducing Mike. He is the Vice President of HudsonTrident, and he is responsible for managing Hudson Analytics, Maritime and Port Security and Resiliency practice. Hudson takes a converged enterprise approach to maritime and port security that recognizes the increased integration of physical, operational, and cybersecurity in the industry. A retired military officer with service in both the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Navy, Mr. Edgerton has specialized in maritime and port security and intelligence for over 30 years. Mike most recently spent over 8 years as the Maritime Security Practice Manager for an international consultancy in the Middle East. Mike is a board-certified security manager through ASIS International and is a fellow of the UK's Security Institute. Mike is also an ISPS auditor and ISO 28000 lead auditor. He is the author of the book, A Practitioner's Guide to Effective Maritime and Port Security, published by Wiley & Sons. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from Bucknell University, a Master of Science of Strategic Intelligence from the Defense Intelligence Agency's National Intelligence University, and is a graduate of the U.S. Naval War College. Mike is also a Fellow of the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers, and Commerce. Mike has extensive experience in international port supply chain security, working on over 40 countries. Indicative projects include leading a strategic security risk assessment of an allied nation's maritime domain and serving as the senior advisor on maritime security to a Middle Eastern nation security agency. Mike, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll try to make the presentation longer than the introduction. Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me without the mic? Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. If I start dropping off, just let me know and I'll speak up or go to the mic. It's just a little bit easier for me. Well, thank you very much for the invitation today. I appreciate it. This is actually an old stomping ground for me. I used to hang out in the Ironbound a lot back 25, 30 years ago when I worked in downtown Newark, so it's nice to be back. The food hasn't changed; it's still great. So very happy to be here. So tonight we're going to talk about understanding maritime cyber risk, and I understand that most of the people in the audience here have a very technical background. This will be not really that technical; it'll be more talking about the enterprise issues. But for those of you that do have a technical background, you'll see the relevance, and I'd certainly welcome any questions at the end. I'm going to try and make sure we have time for questions. So basically, here's what we're going to talk about. Who we are, what we do. We're going to establish the context. We're going to talk about what this thing is, the cybersecurity. People have all kinds of different ideas about it. I think this audience is probably a little bit better informed than many of the audiences I've spoken with, but we're still going to go through that just to make sure that we have a common understanding. And then we're going to go into really understanding the issues, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities of cybersecurity. And then we're going to take it down specifically for the maritime cyber risk, mostly shipboard, a little bit of port, but it'll be, and some of it is actually going to cut across both ships and ports. And then potential first steps that an organization could take to deal with cybersecurity. So who are we? We're Hudson Analytics. We're based in Camden, New Jersey. That's where Luke and I came up from tonight. We have offices around the United States, and we have offices also in Rome, Italy, and Athens and Jakarta. And most of our work, probably, I'd say 80, 75 to 80% of our work is international, although we do a lot of work in the United States as well. We have 5 or 6 practice areas. And the one I run is HudsonTrident, which is the security, and it folds into what we call Hudson Analytics Cyber. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of cuts across both. Just so you know, we're technology agnostic. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not going to sell a service. I'm not going to sell equipment. Nothing. But even with our clients, we don't sell any solutions per se. We have software we use for assessments, but we don't sell solutions that are branded. And then we're very, very much focused on the maritime industry, again, both ashore and afloat. That's almost entirely what we deal with. And we just got an award last year for a cybersecurity maturity model self-assessment tool that allows ports and shipping companies to assess the status of cybersecurity, and it provides recommendations, and we got an award for that. This is our CEO, Cynthia Hudson. She founded the company. That's my colleague Max Bobbies, who runs our cyber practice. And I don't know who the other guy is. So let's talk about a little bit about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a mystery, right? You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, you can't smell it. So it's not like the other senses. So when people think about cybersecurity, it's kind of like, well, I can't see anything, so everything must be okay. That's what many people, lay people, really look at. But the reality, sorry, it's a PowerPoint. The reality is that there's a lot underneath it. This is a PDF of the PowerPoint. It would come up with a bunch of stuff underneath it. I apologize. There's a lot underneath you can't see, and that's the part that we're going to talk about. What is cybersecurity? What is it not? How many people have talked about within your organization, they talk about cybersecurity, and they talk about it's the responsibility of the IT guy or the IT department, right? That's what it always happens. And so what does that mean, though? What does that mean? So is cybersecurity the responsibility of the IT department? I mean, I would just throw it out there. Not really, right? They're the person that deals with it. When you talk about it like this, it makes it sound like it's someone else's problem. If you're a senior manager in a company and you say it's the IT guy's responsibility, you're taking it away from the board, you're taking it away from the C-suite, you're taking it away from everyone else. Right? It cuts across all those things. Cybersecurity is not compliance. There's a lot of things afoot right now. IMO is coming out with some requirements for the shipboard side of the industry to deal with cybersecurity through the ISM code in the next few years. So there's going to be an increase in the Coast Guard. US Coast Guard's coming out with stuff on ports and ships as well. So there's going to be an increased focus on compliance. Does it fit into the ISPS code, the Port Security Code, or not? The problem is, if you look at it as compliance, it takes a checklist approach. Do you deal with financial risk that way? Do you deal with other risks in your organization or your ship or your port that way? You don't look at it as just a checklist approach. You manage the risk. And so there's a danger in that. There's also the danger that it can be solved by a silver bullet, that there's this magic solution, you buy this product and it's going to take care of everything. So what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is like any other risk management activity in the industry. And the maritime industry is very good at managing risk. That's what a lot of this stuff is. It's lessons learned literally in blood, right? It's things that have come out of the industry over the years, over the decades, over the centuries. You learn how to manage risk. This is just another risk management activity, but it's unique because you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. So it's about cultural change and business transformation. This is where the businesses who have been organized for the 20th century, for the industrial age, need to now look at how they organize for the information age and bring in to the business culture the issue of cybersecurity. And it's fundamentally an enterprise approach. You're protecting the business, the bottom line. And we're going to have some examples in here as to how that's been effective. Not necessarily maritime examples, but I'm going to show you a few big examples on how it's been done properly and the response to those attacks and breaches have been managed correctly and other ones where they're not. And it's a responsibility that starts at the top. So if you're a manager, if you're a CEO, if you're a COO, if you have any kind of position like that, it's your responsibility. You're responsible for cybersecurity. Here's just an idea of how things are changing. I'm going to provide you the context. It's a very busy slide. I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. But two things I want you to really understand is that over time, this is 1990, over time, the sophistication of hackers was extremely high. They had to know exactly what they were doing. Over time, that sophistication has dropped considerably. Now you can go out onto the dark web and you can buy malware. You don't need to know what to do. You just need to buy it. You can a couple of clicks and it's done. There's no real magic to it. And so the attack sophistication though has increased. So you're having this confluence, if you will, of easy attacks that can be done by people who don't really know what they're doing, that can be done easily and are becoming more frequent. Your organizations, if you work for a company, chances are your cybersecurity is being tested hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times a day. And you have the firewalls in place that are taking care of these routine types of attacks and probes. But this is what's happening, is this stuff is increasing exponentially. And it's the internet of everything. It's here and it's growing. It's not a fad. And you're seeing it all the time. And each year it increases more and more. You're having mobility devices. Everybody's walking around with a computer, essentially. Your phone has the amount of computing power that exceeds what was on the Apollo spacecraft. Okay, that's what you've got. Storage capacity is increasing, and some of it's not even on your device anymore. It's in the cloud. It's somebody else controls it, and it's out in somebody else's server. Bandwidth availability is increasing so that more data can be moved around. Social media, we all understand what's going on with social media. It's increasing exponentially as well. And it's actually having an effect on society. And whether it's good or bad, you can have that as a separate debate. The fact of the matter is it's here. And cloud-based, we've already talked about applications. So now things are outside your control. Here's an example of the cloud storage from 2009. This is just not a unit of measure, but this is the exponential growth of cloud storage, the Amazon Web Services storage, which is very, very common. And there's no indication that it's going to decrease. It's just going to continue increasing. Here's an example of daily screen time for people from certain countries on average. And the color codes basically are TV, laptop or PC, your phone, and a tablet. So you can see here, above this box, all these countries, the United States is right here. All of these countries, people are on their devices for 6 hours or more a day. So it's part of people's lives now. And the Internet of Things, if you're not familiar with that, that's the Internet now that can control technology, can control physical things. I have a device on my phone here that can control my bed firmness. I have another one that can control the heating in my house. So I can turn the temperature up and down. I can turn the lights on and off. That's the Internet of Things. You can physically control things using the Internet. And that's increasing exponentially as well. And that's the real risk, right, in your industry. What about generators? What about pumps? What about, we're not just talking data, we're talking about physical activity that can do real damage to the industry. I have a couple of examples of that. So the bottom line is we're talking about now the who, what, where, and how. Have you ever been attacked? Most people have been attacked one way or the other. Anybody here have a security clearance or used to have a security clearance? Right, the Office of Personnel Management was hacked. I know they got my information. They got my wife's information. They got my kids' information. If I ever go to China, who they say has it, it'll be interesting to see. They probably know more about me than I do. You know, I'm going to show up at the airport and they're going to want to update my photo file. So anyway, 1 in 5 respondents to a Maritime cybersecurity survey, they've been the victim of an attack. 40% have said that they had preventative measures in place. That's less than half. And of more than 300 people that responded, 21% said they were a victim, 57% said no, and 22% had no response. That's individuals, not the organizations. So it's very, very common. There's some other statistics, I won't read them all, but you can see it's significant. And this is one of the ones where we talk about information integrity and availability. In cybersecurity, there's three components. There's confidentiality. Is the information remaining confidential as it's designed to be, whatever that system is? Does the integrity of the information remain intact? And is it not been manipulated so that you can trust the information you see? And availability. Is it available when you need it, where you need it, and how you need it? So CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability are the key things. This is information that's been made available to areas probably when it wasn't supposed to be. One of the other interesting notes on the commercial side is only 11% notify their insurers. If you remember the days before 9/11 in the ports, a lot of times cargo theft is treated this way. There was a certain threshold. They wouldn't go to the insurers until it hit a certain level. And it's a similar sort of approach right now. The insurance industry is really trying to catch up with this. It's a work in progress. The Lloyd's syndicates in London, a couple of the other insurance industries are trying to wrestle with this. A lot of it has to do with the lack of data for actuarial purposes. How do they value stuff? How do they determine those sorts of numbers that they've got numbers for in other fields of insurance? And that's because right now, 80% were not covered, the ones who did report it. That's a fairly significant exposure. So who are they? This is some of the people that would do it. It's individual hackers, hacktivists, which are people with essentially a political or some sort of ideological bent or intent. Foreign intelligence services like the OPM hack, even though nobody's acknowledged it was the Chinese, it was the Chinese. Terrorists, organized criminal rings, which is very prevalent. Insiders who are maybe malcontents in your organization, and potentially you, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Presumably everybody in this room would be unintentional, but you never know. So it starts and ends with the human. And what you're seeing now is things like, these are hacker conferences, by the way. This one is in China, and this one I think it was in Vegas. I can't remember. This is the podcast one. This is, and they sit there and do basically hacking contests. They try to see if they can, beat the other guy and that sort of thing. So what you have is you have hackers now. It's crime as a service. You want to go on the dark web and you hire somebody's services to hack for you or to do some sort of activity for you. Marketing as a service. Help identify people you do want to either hack or you want to engage in criminal activity with. Networking is one of the ways they do it. Social events. They can read the rest here. They do in hacking conferences, they trade techniques, they trade malware, and they trade training lessons learned, and they have national teams here. So the cyber underground, this is just an idea of how people get into these things that are hackers. There's a huge part of the internet that is huge part of the internet that is not open to the public. And if you take this is just the internet, not the dark web and not the deep web. The deep web is elements within the internet that are not on search engines, they're not indexed. The dark web is usually the Tor browser, and they're not indexed at all, and you need a whole separate browser to get on there, and that's where the real bad stuff is. This is only the stuff that's indexed. So you can see, publicly available is pretty minor, or pretty major, but there's a significant amount that's also invitation only, or is highly vetted, meaning you have to be recommended by someone to get in. That's where a lot of this stuff is done. A lot of the hacking stuff is done, the criminal activity is done. So what's at risk? We talked a little bit about this. Personal information, financial data, credentials, passwords. One of the things our company does is cyber threat intelligence. We actually have people that come out of the intelligence community that will go in for a client and take an outside look in. And I had to fly to Norway before December to provide this stuff to a client. It's so sensitive, we hand carry it. We don't even email it, we just hand carry it over and do the briefing. And we're showing the company passwords, email addresses, all these things that we could get. And we didn't even go into their systems. This is stuff that was for sale on the outside. And you'd be shocked at what's out there. Confidential information for anyone on the commercial side, clients and lists, charter party rates, other rates, contracts and terms, all those things that potentially provide you a competitive advantage. Operational information, data integrity, voyage data. On the port side, one of the things that's particularly of interest is terminal operating systems, where cargo information, container information, seal information, all that stuff is on there. It can be used for nefarious purposes. Political activism, this is when they come in and they just go in to get information to either make it public when it's not supposed to be, like WikiLeaks, or there's another site called Public Intelligence, which doesn't so much focus on commercial, but focuses on government. Business, competition, competency, reputation, business plans, and then obviously the financial side of it, invoicing, rates, stuff like that. Banking information. All that stuff's at risk for any one of the industries, not just the maritime. This is throughout the private sector. So where is it happening? It's happening everywhere. These are the 3 rules, as they say, of the internet. Everything that's connected to the internet can be hacked. Everything is being connected to the internet, so everything can be hacked. That's the problem. And it can cascade across an organization. And again, I'll show you some examples of that. So one of the issues is the challenge of detection. And this is a kind of a busy slide. Doesn't really illustrate it that well. But what I'm going to show you here is discovery and containment times, detection times, are days, months, years, and ever. Right now, the average time, if somebody gets into a system, the average detection time is 240 days. It's down from 270 days. So it's getting better. Not much better, but it's better. That's what this slide is showing. They can get in fast, they can exfiltrate information fast, but the detection period is a lot longer. And there's one case I'll show you where they were in a system for 2 years. For the OPM hack, where they took all the information, they were supposedly in the system for a year. One of the issues too is trust relationships. So these are thumb drives. I don't know why that don't though. And the thumb drives, but just walk through this. You get a thumb drive at a trade show or something. You get that somewhere else. You put it in your home computer because you're using it for something at home. You send an email to your work computer. I do that, or I take this over to my work computer sometimes. Gets through a whole bunch of other systems, and it can expand out to be released broadly. The attack in Iran, where they took out the centrifuges that were supporting the nuclear power program, this was apparently a thumb drive that was put into a computer because those computers were not connected to the internet. There's an internal connection. It's a thumb drive with the malware that led all those centrifuges to basically rotate themselves into destruction. So it involves everyone. Homework, the lines are blurry. How many of us work at home? A lot of us, right? It's asymmetrical, meaning we talk about asymmetrical threats is it's a threat that's not direct, it's an indirect threat. It's one that's harder to detect and is going after a more vulnerable spot in your security. It's easily executable. It affects the entire organization, either reputation, data integrity, financial loss, whatever. It's persistent. Once it's in a system, especially when it starts spreading, trying to contain it and remediate it is very, very difficult. It's financially rewarding for the person who does it or the group that does it. It's also easy. And cybersecurity now is not a luxury, but a necessity. So it's the Trojan horse idea, the trust relationships of the Trojan horse kind of theory, or model, if you will. They exploit the trust relationships with partners, customers, friends, and family. 70% of the cases, there was a secondary victim. 75% of the attacks spread to the secondary victim within 1 day. That's how fast it moves from the initial point of entry to another point of entry, to another machine, another system. And 40% occurred within 1 hour. So that's how fast it can move. So what are some of the specific maritime cyber risk factors? Before I do that, I'll tell you just a quick story on this. When I was in the Middle East, I had a CEO of a major company that got threatening phone calls. And the caller was able to say specifically things about his family that very, like where the kids went to school, like clubs and stuff they were in at school. So we had to come in and we had to look at it. We looked at the social media profile. And the social media profile, within about an hour, I was able to come up with a full profile of his family. Where the kids went to school in the Middle East. One of them went to college back in the States. I got that information. I got the clubs, I got the photos, I got their names, I got his wife's information, I got everything. I went and showed it to him. And he and his wife said that they were not going to change their lifestyle by changing the privacy settings on Facebook and Instagram and whatever else they had. So that's one of the risks. That's another trust relationship that can be exploited when you have that level of confidence and you're not willing to make those adjustments to your security. There's nothing I can do to convince her either. So. Maritime cyber risk factor. So specific to the maritime industry, now that we've talked about the context, let's talk about the maritime industry. So basically, every maritime transportation company of one sort or another in the world economy uses data. It uses it, stores it, transfers it, exchanges it, manages it, internally or externally. I would challenge you to show me a company that doesn't do that, except maybe in North Korea, somewhere like that. And so it really is truly global. And data is the lifeblood, or one of the lifebloods of the industry. So why? Why is the maritime industry important? There's lots of information of both either commercial or strategic utility. So there's things like, there's lots of information going around. It can be as simple as monitoring equipment on the ships coming back to the home office. It can be things, certainly cargo information. It can be financial information, contractual information. There's lots of legacy systems. Let's be honest, in the maritime sector, we're not talking cutting edge technology on the cyber side for the most part. In the ports, I've been in one port where they had Windows, I think Windows 2000 left. One of the ones is Windows XP is a system not being supported. This was before that. And they told me it was okay because it's not connected to anything. I said, okay. But there's a lot of systems that are old in the industry, right? And those, if they're not being supported, they become more vulnerable. They're not getting patched, they're not getting updates, and Microsoft, whoever is operating them, is not keeping the security up to date on those. There's lots of money in maritime. I mean, I know the oil prices are low, container prices are relatively low, all that stuff. But the bottom line is, for an industry, there's a lot of money moving around. There's a lot of third-party data around as well. Companies are holding information for other companies, and that's an additional liability. Good language. Language is English, so it's easy. So cyber risk is more than just data breaches. It can be financial, reputational loss, but there's a couple of where physical events were caused. This is what I was referencing before. The Stuxnet is where some countries, reputed to be the United States and or Israel, essentially put a virus or malware into the Iranian nuclear centrifuge process. And basically, all the centrifuges were destroyed. They basically rotated themselves and were destroyed. And that was caused by the injection of cyber threat, if you will, into a system that caused physical damage. And Shamoon was the one that was the attack against Saudi Aramco. If you remember that a few years ago. And that was one where they basically froze up all the systems and included some effect of the SCADA systems, the systems that control pipelines and pumps and things like that for some of their facilities. That had a physical impact as well. And Sony was a game changer because it targeted individual employees, they had systems reputations, and it involves corporate secrets. And it hit everything. Every piece of data that Sony had was put out, made available, and that was reputed to be the North Koreans. So on a ship, typical ship, here are some of the things, pretty self-evident that can be affected by cyber threats or cybersecurity component. Obviously, the navigation systems, engineering systems, communication systems, those are the key ones. But there's also cargo control systems, There's all kinds of other systems on the ship that we can think about. Again, depending on the type of ship, how new or old it is. But there's a lot of information. There's information now on equipment that gets sent back to the home office, how it's performing, to be monitored. There's a lot of material or a lot of stuff that can affect ship on the cyber side. Ports, even more so, if I would argue, even more so. And the ports, because they handle the data. That's where the data integrity and the third-party liability really kicks in. Cargo information, personnel information, all kinds of information in the ports as well. So here's some of the things that we've come up with. SCADA systems I've talked about, industrial control systems, engine governors and power management, navigation systems. There has been evidence of ECDIS, some ECDIS systems having manipulated charts. Not sure whether it was intentional or not, but there has been some documentation of that as well. There has been GPS spoofing. You may have read about a couple of captains sailing in the Black Sea who, when they were using GPS, it showed their location being on land in, I forget where, Azerbaijan or somewhere. But anyway, no, in Ukraine, I think. But anyway, GPS spoofing. There's some thought that the sailors, the U.S. sailors that were captured by the Iranians in the small boats, that may have been a result of GPS spoofing as well. That their location may have been misrepresented. Not to excuse it, because they should have been using multiple systems, but it's one of the things that being considered. Business software applications, HR, finance, financial, email. I told you our cyber threat insurance, we find a lot of email addresses and passwords that makes easy access into all these systems. Human resources is important because you can target people that way too. You can get their information, but you can also identify people that you want to target by role. Somebody's the chief financial officer at a company or an organization. You get on there and you can try to do something for them. Security systems, any of the operating systems, we've talked about that. And information pertaining to crew, employees, and contractors. So how would they do that? And this one is the Port of Antwerp cyber attack. This is a big attack. Has anyone heard of this? Yeah, so in Port of Antwerp, what happened is drug traffickers recruited hackers to break into the systems, IT systems. They used physical access to the networks and the installation of snooping devices so they could then further disseminate their access, if you will. They controlled container movements and location information of those containers for 2 years. They were inside for 2 years and never detected. They did a couple things. They used it to facilitate drug trafficking. They also used it to facilitate cargo theft. So they basically got a twofer. They smuggled things and then they stole cargo. And it represents transnational risk because it had to do with supply chain integrity. So it affected not only the Port of Antwerp, its reputation, everything else, but it affected security of the European Union, and it potentially affected the security of other trading partners like the United States and other countries. The Iranian shipping lines were hacked in 2011. Again, they were reputed to be by Western or Allied powers. Servers were compromised. In this case, the logistics systems were crashed. The entire fleet of 172 vessels were compromised. So what happened was they ended up with their manifests were manipulated. In some cases, they were eliminated, so they didn't know what they had on board. They changed rates. They made containers disappear on the systems, not on the ships. So they would sit there, and the ship would commit, and they'd have a container, they had no idea where it was supposed to go, whose it was, anything like that. They changed delivery dates and locations, and they changed client and vendor information. So they really screwed up all their cargo operations worldwide. Now, it's the Iranians, so how upset are we? Not that upset, but the point is that it's something that can be done to any shipping company.
Was the Blackmail case?
No, this was reputed to be a state actor.
State actor?
Yeah.
What's the benefits of the state action? I'm trying to find why would somebody do that?
I'm trying to remember the context of 2011. There was probably something geopolitical going on. I don't know what it would be. Yeah, I'd have to look it up. So how they do it? Here's a couple examples where they got in using social engineering. They were able to get information off social media, hack email accounts, stuff like that. They were able to impersonate defense logistics agencies. They were able to buy a bunch of gas oil, deliver it. There's no record of it. They got a claim of that $18 million payout. And it was all falsified. And there was a civil judgment against one of the companies involved for third-party liability.
Wouldn't it be a government fine imposed on that company?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
So the government hacked in to prove that they did something to get money?
No. There was the judge here ordered this an insurance company to pay a claim, and then there was that's been appealed. It wasn't a fine. It was an order for payment. But the insurance company didn't want to pay. It was an $18 million loss. I had another one in 1980. You had a computerized pumping system. And this is early. This is very early, the early stages of computerized systems on a ship. Don't know nobody really knows exactly what happened, but because of problems with it, the ballast system was compromised and caused severe listing. Whether it was an accident or intentional, nobody knows. It was one of the earliest cases. And then they're not pet yet. That's the recent one. Most of you have heard about that. The cause, again, is up for dispute. I've been told that, again, that this was a state actor attack against Ukrainian interests. So you can guess who the state actor was. That went awry. That they lost control of it. And it went out and it went from Ukrainian, I guess, oil and gas, and ended up with Maersk Line, and there's a pharmaceutical company was, I think, Merck. Yeah, Merck was affected as well. So it was an email campaign. It was ransomware as a service, but there was no ransomware. It was initially, for those of you not familiar, the ransomware is your computer gets locked up, the data in it's locked up, you have to pay, usually in Bitcoin, to get access to your data. But in this case, there was no opportunity to pay to get access to the data. They simply locked it up. And they eventually wiped it out. They got rid of it. And they used some of the NSA hacker tools that our friend Snowden released and compromised earlier. And as a result of this, there was the estimated costs at the minimum is about $300 million. And there was a couple cases where Maersk was having to turn some of their cargo operations over to competitors to get stuff handled. So it was a big deal. They say it could be as much as $600 million. A couple other recent examples: Malaysian bunkering company defrauded the government. Was defrauded of $1 million. Pirates hacked into a global shipping company systems, and they used this again. They went after the cargo data to locate and retrieve a specific piece of cargo. And they don't know exactly what the value is or what was really in there. And then there was some fraudulent behavior on charters. I've also worked on a couple cases where there was a port in the United States, port facility in the United States, where they had some of their information was locked up on ransomware, and they either didn't or couldn't pay it, and they weren't going to report it until a Coast Guard inspection team showed up and said, "Show me some of the information." They said, "Well, we can't because it's locked up and we can't get to it," and they weren't going to report it. And so there's a lot of issues here with reporting as well. And everybody on the commercial side, you understand that because it's reputational issues, there's financial responsibilities, liability issues. So the situation is probably worse than what we actually know. So this came out of a kind of a future project from UK University. It basically said that the economy is so intensely competitive, and shipping is competitive, is that there's always going to be innovative and non-attributional ways to slow down the competitors. So there could be competition. Competitors could be involved in some of this, is what they're speculating in the future. I don't know if I believe it, but it's one of the things they postulate. There's another thing called The Daily Show that I wanted to really kind of discuss. I can't get into a lot of detail, but this is a great example of an ongoing case going on. This is an issue where a phishing email was sent to one individual, and this has been going on now for 5 years. It's still active, and it's global, and it's an attempt to get information in the shipping industry of cargo data, financial data. Everything I've talked about has been targeted in this ongoing operation. It's being monitored. They're using key logging, which is basically where they can see what you're typing or what the victim is typing, and other practices. So they have what's considered, in some cases, not fully, but they have near perfect access to certain ports, certain shipping companies, and the associated financials. Well, they're trying to. I mean, everybody's aware of it, but they say they've actually, from what I've been told, is they've only seen and been able to ascertain about 20% of the exposure of the attack right now, and they still haven't gotten to the source. I mean, this is just exploded. It's like the flu season this year. And so one of the biggest issues that besides the issue of the kind of the sabotage and wrecking a ship and making it run aground and all the things we talk about in the movies, the biggest thing is actually data integrity. And this has the effect of potentially making third-party liability issues, making reputational risk an issue, financial losses an issue, facilitating cargo theft, facilitating trafficking. There's all kinds of issues with data integrity that can come into play. But some of the things that will be done is posting this information, making up information, manipulating existing information and putting it in there so it's incorrect, altering of online media, modifying stored data. And what I've seen here is in terminals I've seen outside the United States where I've worked, where traffickers will manipulate seal information on containers and then have an insider in there because they have a duplicate seal, but they couldn't duplicate the existing number. They didn't have the information, so anyway, they made up a number. They go in, they were able to manipulate the system, put the seal on, and they're good to go. In other cases, they get in there and they do have information on the existing seal. They create a duplicate and they can go in and make a switch just as easy. They've also modified. I've seen modification of data where they have it moved around the container yard outside of the way of cameras and lights, so they can access it easier. Things like that. Transmitting false data and manipulating the flow of data, cutting it off, redirecting it, things like that. So as kind of business leaders, what are you left with? So some of the questions that most people in the C-suite would have are, and we get this a lot, what do we invest in? How much do we budget? Prioritizing. How do you know where to start? Where do you start on it? How do we know what to buy? That's a big one. How do we measure the effectiveness of our investments? And this is always a problem in safety and security, right? How do you measure stuff that doesn't happen? But that's something you've got to consider. Can you recover from an attack, and have they planned to recover from an attack? Do they have recovery and resiliency plans, business continuity plans, things like that? And cyber issues, are they included in those plans? And are cybersecurity investments sustainable? See, these are all key questions that need to be addressed. And a lot of them are these. And this is where people will come in and just try to sell you that single silver bullet solution, or they'll come in and they'll say, buy our stuff and everything will be fine. And that's what we're trying to say, is that that's not the case. This needs to be managed at the C-suite level. There are solutions, but there's no silver bullet. And so what we see here, and this is, I think, an accurate quote, is responses have ranged to a large extent from frantic and undisciplined to paralyzed. People just don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to start with this thing. You see here a quote by somebody from Goldman Sachs, a senior executive. We wasted millions of dollars. Not only were we undisciplined in our deployment of cybersecurity technologies, we possibly created more vulnerabilities. And that's because they didn't take a risk-based approach. They didn't sit down and they say, what do we have to protect? What are our priorities? What are the vulnerabilities and threats affecting those key assets? And how do we address it in a holistic solution, company-wide, organizational-wide? So where do you start? Cyber risk management must be owned by the leadership. This goes back to my first comment about the IT guy. Okay, this is not the IT guy's problem. This is the corporate executive's problem. The IT guy is one of the individuals who is part of the solution. The cyber risk can affect everything that a chief executive or chief operating officer is concerned with. Profit and loss, legal exposure, operational effectiveness, reputation, and third-party liability for vendors, partners, employees, and yourself. It's like any other corporate risk you're looking at. So one of the things we recommend is that you do a maturity analysis, cybersecurity capability maturity analysis. And that is understanding that you're not going to go from here to fully mature in any short period of time. There's got to be a disciplined approach to it based on risk management. And that's looking at the organization as a whole across all the practice areas. That's the key thing that needs to be done. That's our recommendation. Much like you would look at legal exposure, how much insurance you're going to buy, all those other things a company does, you do the same thing for cyber. Here's an example I was going to show you. Remember, Target got hacked in 2013. They got hacked because one of their vendors was a heating and air conditioning repair company. They introduced the malware into Target. That's how it got in. They got all this credit card information. They were not well prepared for a cyber attack, and you can see the changes in stock value. The difference in valuation, what they expected and anticipated versus the reality. Sony, on the other hand, was in better shape. When the North Koreans got through with them, they still had issues, but it wasn't quite as severe, and they were able to, actually it's the other way around. Target recovered better. Target recovered a lot faster. Sony did not. Sony was really in bad shape. And that's an example of how cybersecurity preparation affects the bottom line. Another example is the IMarEST hack and the Equifax hack. You can see here how C-suite communication made a big difference in how Equifax reacted and how IMarEST AP Muller reacted. There was a big difference in preparation, response, and their capabilities. Not excusing that it should have happened in the first place, but they were better prepared, they're more resilient, the ones that were successful. So when you're sitting there as a company, one of the things you see is people like to start here. The first thing they want to do is take some kind of action. And they want to go ahead and make purchases, buy services, and things like that to start reacting right away to a cyber exposure or a cyber incident. We recommend you start here. This is where you do a baseline assessment to understand what you're faced with from a risk management perspective before you invest anything. Because you can start investing here and not necessarily invest in the right things or the right people or the right solutions. In the Middle East, we used to say certain clients used to like to buy the car and then learn to drive. That's kind of the model here. And then once you've done that, you go ahead and you make the assessments, you make some initial realignments and improvements, and then you remediate that further. You continually look at your ways to improve it, and then you develop reporting mechanisms as you move forward and become more mature. But the mistakes are often made right there. And how many people have done that in other things? I know I've done it myself. You know, there's a problem, I buy the solution to whatever that problem is, and probably haven't sat down and done the bottom line kind of root cause analysis and the baseline assessment. So there's like kind of three levels of moving to maturity. The cyber world is flat. It's a necessary evil. You got to address it, but you don't really want to deal with it in a holistic manner. The IT department's responsibility. It's someone else's problem. Just handle it. Then it's kind of, we have to deal with cybersecurity. This is where the kind of the light bulb goes on. You have to deal with cybersecurity. It's a business risk. We need to look at it throughout the business operations and identify the risks and then start mitigating them. And we need to bring it out to beyond just the IT department. And then everything here is cybersecurity is part of the corporate culture. It's fully embedded, and we're continually revisiting it like we do with financial issues, HR issues, everything else. And ultimately, as you become more mature, your risk drops, and then the discussion comes to insurance. How do you deal with that final little bit? And the insurance industry is trying to catch up with that. And they're making their way, but it's taking a little bit of time to get up with that. And then hopefully you can transfer that risk to insurance once you become fully mature. But the bottom line is right now everybody's investing in this stuff: technology, computer systems. There's not a lot of investment going on here, and this is actually where a lot of it needs to happen. Education, awareness, risk management, corporate governance, all those things, that'll drive everything else that you invest in.
What is OS?
Human operating system. So some of the other things is executive leadership briefings. Make sure it's on maybe at the board level. We recommend it becomes an agenda item for a board, agenda item for senior staff meetings, so they can't avoid it. It has to be addressed. They have to talk about it. Have the training a lot of different ways. Training can be tailored depending on the level of staff and what they're responsible for. Maybe even tabletop exercises combined with other. If you're doing ISPS or oil spill exercises, just include the cyber component. And then technical staff training is very different. They have to have a lot more advanced training. That concludes my presentation. I don't think I kept you too long, I know. Yeah, 8 o'clock almost on the dot. So. If we have time, I'd like to offer up the questions. If anybody has any questions, yeah, please.
So, obviously, the problem will never go away.
No.
Your curve never went to zero.
Nope.
It never goes away. Number two, you have a generation of people that feel like there is no such thing as privacy. Privacy isn't important. So, how do you change that culture with a corporation?
Yeah, that's a great point. The first point is really good because that's a risk management, a classic risk management question, isn't it? Is it'll never go to zero. The only way it'll go to zero is for you not to be in that business. The only way I had this argument when I was in the service. I had an argument with an Air Force colonel. I shouldn't say Air Force. I had an argument with a colonel. Happened to be in the Air Force. We basically this is back in the 90s when Bosnia was a big. It was kind of everybody was in Bosnia, and he said basically. We're in an inter-service force protection conference. He said, the number one mission of the troops in Bosnia is force protection, meaning self-defense. And I was like 3 ranks below the guy. I said, Colonel, that's totally wrong. Yeah. If you want force protection to be the number one mission of the military in Bosnia, the answer is to leave. The answer is not. So we have the mission there is peacekeeping and peacemaking. And that's the mission, and force protection is the risk management element. That's what it is. So it's a risk management question. The second one is much more difficult, and that's a social and cultural issue. I'm not even going to get into what we do as a society because I don't think we're not going to solve that. But as an organization, the organization needs to create within its corporate culture an expectation coupled with training and very clearly laid out levels of expectation, or behavior expectation, is the only way to do it. An example I would give is people complain about the different generations. Every generation complains about the previous generation, right? Right. So, but you have organizations that have been able to maintain some degree of consistency throughout the generations because of their culture, because of their expected levels of behavior. And if you do it that way, that's an organizational problem. That's a C-suite problem. Society at large, I don't know if that's a whole different question. But I think organizations can try to manage that as much as possible. Now, is the level of privacy expected different today than what was 30 years ago? Yeah. I mean, when I got the letter from OPM saying that somebody, the Chinese, had all my stuff, they put me on like the credit. They gave me a free credit, report for. I'm still on it, I think, actually. But I actually didn't even lose that much sleep about it. I just told my wife, I said, well, at least it's the Chinese and not a criminal. No, yeah. The Chinese aren't going to probably sell it, I hope. So that's the approach. Sorry.
Well, Joe and I are close friends, so I can kind of Joe, it's not. Quite frankly, I'm on the other side of the argument. I think that actually corporations and organizations tend to keep too much of their information secret, and thereby force their personnel to kind of mix secret and non-secret stuff. And at that stage, the lid is off. There's no kernels. So this is what we want to protect.
Right.
And instead, they just have everything sitting around, and it's very strange because it is a big cultural issue, actually. And I think in some ways that younger people kind of break the cultural issue. I remember we talked about secret security plans. I remember that I had gay workmates who had secret security plans, and their biggest fear was somebody to find out that they're gay.
Right.
But if they were able to clear right away that they were gay, then they were no security risk.
Right.
And so that type of stuff needs to be very carefully evaluated too, I think. And I think we really have too much stuff that is locked away, that has no purpose.
Yeah, the default is to lock it up.
That's right. That's right.
And the government does that too, right?
Oh, God, sure.
Yeah, but you're right. Private sector does it as well, and especially something they don't fully understand. If they don't fully understand it, lock it up. Because I'd rather take an abundance of caution than risk. And that, when you go into the kind of the whole of organization risk management for information, part of that is evaluating what can be relatively, what needs to be protected. What are the key assets, whether it be data or equipment that needs to be protected, and that's what you focus on. Yeah.
Yes, talking about locking things up. Some of the support operations you mentioned, they probably work on EDI. So that's a separate system generally, it's not open to the outside environment.
Yeah.
Is it still having those issues?
Yeah, and what it is primarily insider threat. So what it is social engineering, where they get on, they identify people either through in some cases through just their affiliations in the neighborhoods and things, but in other cases through social engineering, where they go on and identify people on Facebook, or they identify people who have certain positions in the company, and then they either co-opt them one way or the other, either voluntarily or involuntarily. It becomes an insider issue. Yeah, I mean, you're right. They're usually closed systems. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.